Hello SDI students, my name is Martin, and in this video we will be covering the cycle of operations for a double action revolver. During double action, the trigger is pulled rearward and it rotates around its axis pin under pressure from the trigger spring. The hammer mounted sear comes into contact with the trigger, forcing the hammer to rotate around its axis pin under pressure from the hammer spring. The front tip of the trigger tilts the cylinder stop out of engagement with the cylinder, allowing the cylinder to rotate. Continued rearward movement of the trigger pushes the hand upward, which engages the splines on the back of the cylinder, forcing it to turn. The transfer bar moves upward towards the firing pin. The front tip of the trigger disengages from the cylinder stop. Pressure from the cylinder stop plunger spring rotates the cylinder stop around its axis pin and into engagement with the slots in the cylinder, locking the cylinder in place. The trigger rotates out of engagement with the sear and the hammer rotates forward under pressure from the hammer spring. The transfer bar is positioned in between the hammer and firing pin. The hammer strikes the transfer bar strikes the firing pin, pushing it forward into the percussion cap of the chambered round, starting the firing sequence. The bullet is pushed out of the case, across the cylinder gap and into the barrel. As the trigger is released, a few things happen simultaneously. The hand drops down, the transfer bar is lowered, the sear re-engages, and the front of the trigger re-engages the cylinder stop. During single action, the hammer is manually rotated around its axis pin under pressure from the hammer spring. The front lower lip of the hammer rotates the trigger, turning it around its axis pin and moving the trigger backward. The hand moves upward, engaging the splines on the back of the cylinder, forcing it to turn. The transfer bar moves up. The front tip of the trigger lowers the cylinder stop out of engagement with the cylinder. The hammer continues rearward until the notch at the base of the hammer engages the trigger. Pulling the trigger rotates the trigger out of engagement with the hammer. The hammer rotates under pressure from the hammer spring. The hammer strikes the transfer bar, which pushes the firing pin forward into the percussion cap of the chambered cartridge, which starts the firing sequence. This concludes the cycle of operations for the double action revolver.